Hey everyone, welcome back. We are here at the Verde River. From Sedona, we were dropped about 1,000 feet in elevation. We're roughly at 3,400 feet in elevation, almost directly west of Cottonwood. Beautiful riparian corridor. We have cottonwoods just starting to leaf out here. I don't know what the temperature is, roughly high 50s, low 60s, beautiful, pretty sunny day, slightly overcast. Anyways, we are going to get into fire, specifically hand drill. I like to teach hand drill because it's a little more historically accurate in the Southwest specifically, but not only in the Southwest, but worldwide. Hand drill was found on all continents and cultures around the globe. So just to talk a little bit more about it, you can probably see all of the hand drill components in front of me. This is a smattering of some of my hand drill sets that I do have. These are hearth boards or fire boards, people may call them. These are the spindles, and here's the set I'm going to work with today. Although I have worked with all of these, as you can see, most of them I've twisted up fire with a lot of them. So just a little bit of historical background from what I've been able to learn over the years about fire. So if you go and you go to the mother continent, Africa, humans have been traced back to there, and I'm talking about migration here a little bit. And I believe hand drill helped humans be able to migrate off the continent of Africa because it was mobile and it was controllable for us. And it roughly dates when we were able to leave the African continent and settle off the African continent about 70,000 years ago. There is some evidence that we were able to leave the African continent up to 185,000 years ago. Archaeology is always changing. They're doing new finds. Dates are always fluctuating and changing. But I kind of go with the 70,000 year mark because that's when we were actually able to stay off the African continent and start settlements. What I've researched and what I've found is prior to that, 70,000 years, 100,000 years, 120, 185, they might have been temporary settlements and not full-time settlements. Anyways, that's kind of a random fact. However, I find it interesting, and here's what I find interesting. Dr. Ann Weaver, she, I think, has since retired from the Santa Fe Community College. She's a paleoanthropologist. I would go into her classroom when humans started coming onto the scene around 200,000 years ago. I would do a quick demonstration in 45 minutes with cordage and hand drill fire by friction specifically is what she wanted. And I asked her one day, she wanted me to do some of these skills because this is where our ancestry came from. One common theme that we have cross-culturally on all different continents is the Stone Age skills. We all come from Stone Age skills somehow, somewhere. And that's roughly 95% of our history. We all lived in the Stone Age skills with our ancestors. So back to Dr. Ann Weaver, the paleoanthropologist. We were demonstrating, students were doing hand drill, fire, and experimenting with that. And I asked her, I'm like, so obviously these are pieces of wood. Pieces of wood decompose. We find very little archaeological record of hand drill or anything wood related. We'll find bone, we'll find wood, we'll find antler. Sorry, we won't find wood. We'll find bone, we'll find antler, and we'll find stone. Those things tend to last over a long time. And because of this, I asked Dr. Ann Weaver, I'm like, so Dr. Weaver, how old do you think hand drill really is? She did not hesitate to say a minimum of 40,000 years, even pushing it to 70,000. So if you think about that, these two little components with the potential of going up to 70,000 years old correlates with us being able to, us as human ancestors, us as humans and our human ancestors correlates with roughly the 70,000 year time frame when we were able to leave the African continent and settle off the African continent. I just find that interesting. So with that, as you're doing hand drill and as I'm showing you how to create it and the components to it and how to twist up fire and some techniques to it, if you have the capability and you wish, think in your mind Go back in history. Yes, me as a European ancestor, it's been several thousand years since I've done this, since my family's done this, but it is still in my DNA, it's still in my cellular memory. So as you're doing this and making this, realize and be patient with yourself that it's probably been several thousand years, if not a couple hundred years, for your ancestors to do it, but also realize that we have a long human history of doing this too, up to 70,000 years ago, if not potentially more. Also, here specifically in the Verde Valley, they were mining salt all the way, to about 1000 BCE. BC. Before Common Era, CE. Sorry, I have to reorganize my thinking when I'm talking date frames. One thing to note, when I use dates, I try to use the term BCE, before Common Era, and CE, Common Era. That way it doesn't relate to something a European or a religious annotation, like BC, before Christ. I do before BCE, before Common Era, 00 and older, and instead of AD, it's Common Era, CE, 00 up to present. So with that, as I sit here and ramble on, and I apologize, salt and salt mines were a pretty big part of the Verde Valley for the ancient people here. There was a particular salt mine that was excavated, I believe, in the early 1900s, all the way up to the, I'm not sure what the last kind of archaeological dig was that was going on, probably in the 90s. But they carbon dated quite a few artifacts that they found in there. They also found human remains. They also wood handles for like pickaxing salt mines apart, or the salt veins apart. They date anywhere from Common Era, about 1100, up to the 1400s. In there were found, I believe, 3 hearth boards and 1 spindle. It did not say of what wood type it was, but these are dated somewhere into that time frame, 1100 Common Era up to early 1400s, 1400 CE, or Common Era. So this is historic to the southwest, in the very region and very valley that we're in right now. So I find that little tidbit of history just kind of interesting, with time frames 40,000 years minimum up to 70,000 years, which I totally believe. It's very mobile, it's easy to make. In terms of big picture related stuff, these 2 components are fairly easy to find off of the landscape. As you can see, it's just 2 components. It's 1, the hearth board. It's 2, the spindle. Raw form is going to look something like this. It's going to look, I maybe collected this piece of saguaro rib multiple years ago down south where the saguaro grows. It's going to look like this. At first, it's not going to look kind of like this. I have to process it, and I'll show you some videos, tutorial videos, on how I get it from the raw piece of wood down to this hearth board. I also, will collect the seep willow. Ideally, I can find it dried. If not, I collect it green, I bundle it together, and I let it sit bundled together upright as it grew. So this part was into the ground, the thicker part tips into the air, for roughly 4 months, and I let them dry like that. So I need to process this. I need to kind of cut this to the appropriate length. I need to heat straighten it over an ember base. Notice I didn't say fire, I said ember, and we can talk about that a little bit later, as that is going to be part of the hand drill making, is working with fire and an ember base with even consistent heat. So in order for me to even get this, there's a process involved. Is it possible for me to find a usable, nice, straight, fairly straight piece that I could make fire with, where I do not have to heat straighten it? Yes, I've come across it, and I have done it. So that being said, it's possible. If you need to make fire today, you just need to spend more time and more effort, in my opinion, looking for the components that are going to work without having to manipulate the wood too much in order to create fire for yourself. If you want to have more longevity and more consistency, you're going to want to manipulate the wood to where it's appropriate to be able to make fire consistently. And you'll see what I mean by appropriate as I'm making these things along the way. Anybody have any questions? If so, you're probably going to have to call me or email me, and I will check my email once a week in regards to it. So let's get into the two different components now.